that is with the National Building Review Board. You're most welcome, sir.
Thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure. And next to him is Engineer Michael Mwase, who is a PhD fellow, and he's with Makerere University. You're most welcome.
Thank you, thank you.
All right, so let's first understand the word fundis. When someone hears the word fundis, it's usually meaning the informal version of an engineer, especially when it comes to construction. So let me start with you, Mr. Mwase. When we say fundi, what's that translated to?
Yes, fundi is a local word that is used by the local people, and mostly in Kampala and Greater Kampala. The word changes as you go further and further,
okay.
But it just means a construction technician. It could be a welder, it could be a carpenter, it could be a mason, but mostly used informally to mean a mason on site. So that's why we use the terminology fundi.
Okay,
yes.
So it's someone who has a skill,
yes,
that has been trained from a formal center, or?
Both, actually, formal and informal. There are so many stages of fundi.
Yeah.
You can start as a porter, then with your experience, you actually manage to do the work, and you're still called a fundi. So there's no senior fundi, middle fundi, and lower fundi. It's just a word to mean a technician, someone who can work, whether trained through vocation institutes or colleges, or experience.
Okay,
yes,
we'll come back to the question of training thereafter,
yes, yes.
Later on. But Mr. Mutalya, in regards to the National Building Review Board, I know that there's a Building Control Act that came into enforcement back in 2013, and the purpose, of course, was to amend the laws regarding erection of buildings as a way of ensuring that there's decent, there's also safe, as well as planned building structures that are coming out here and there. 10 years down the road, talk to us about the effect of this decision towards shaping the construction sector today.
Thank you very much. Previously, the laws that were existing had a few gaps that presented also challenges in the sector. And as a result, so many other difficulties, accidents, rampant incidences, etc. So the promulgation of the Act was basically came into place to streamline these processes and to ensure that we mitigate on the challenges and also fix the gaps that were in the existing laws.
So when you say gaps, could you please elaborate?
For instance, you had three laws, for instance, speaking about the same thing. And when you have too many cooks, definitely you have they will spoil the soup. So and therefore it also speaks to the law. If you have too many subject that is in different laws, it then becomes a problem, because somebody will have to look at this law, somebody will have to look at the other law. So the Building Control Act was then come into place to harmonize and in a way give us a uniform blueprint on how to do building control. And when the Act came into place, it then brought into place streamline the processes. It also streamlined the way building control must be implemented across the country. Previously there was no regulator. Now the National Building Board is brought in to regulate, to ensure that all local authorities who are vested with this mandate do the right thing, and also to bring in place a strict regulatory framework, and by doing so trying to improve on our compliance rates. As the board, we have also started operationalizing this in 2018. Yes, 2013, but there is a lot that needed to be done between that time. Case in point, bring the regulations in place, also bring the national code in place. So that's what caused the delay. But now we are full throttle. We have those instruments in place, so we are now operationalizing the Act. And we are also, based on the Act, the board has now been structured fully. We now also have a secretariat that is discharging this mandate. We also have we have also put in place a strategic plan that is now guiding us on the way we should discharge this mandate. And also, of course, what we have to do in our case is to improve our compliance rates. Our compliance stands at 20%, which is really dismal. And we now, ours is now to ensure that we improve the statistics, to ensure that we are able to compete within the region, because with those kinds of statistics, we're not going to attract people into this sector.
So assessment of the 5 years so far that the journey has been in practicability, implementation versus response,
yes.
Your assessment of the two, because as a board, of course, you're not working aloof.
Yes.
You have to work together with the sector players.
Yes.
How has that been in terms of enforcement?
Actually, one of the pillars in our strategic plan is to create partnerships and collaborate with other like-minded, with other stakeholders within the sector. And we have managed, also including regulators as well, National Physical Planning Board, NEMA, the utility companies, and also academia as well. And that's why even this partnership with Makerere is very critical for us, because it is going to help us improve on our compliance rates. We are talking about a fundi who is very critical on the value chain when it comes to the building in a building. So partnerships for us are very critical, and we believe that through these kinds of interventions we will be able to improve on our compliance rates. And so we would like to, this is something that we're going to constantly do. We started last year, and this conversation is going to continue, and we are going to also to partner with other organizations within the sector to ensure that we improve on our compliance. So the response has been good, and that's why now Makerere is also on board with us to ensure that we continue.
When people usually say that the response is good, and they sit on a board, chances of that being completely true 100%.
Yes.
Yeah, it's challenging. So, Mr. Mwase, yes. I know that you're on the ground and with your experience and expertise. Yes. Could you paint us the realistic picture on ground? Because even with 5 years of the board having implemented this act actively, buildings are still coming down. You're still having poor quality in construction, and you're having a growing number of informal fundis. Yes.
Okay, thank you again. But let me first go back a little bit. The compliancy, I think that's what NBRB is trying to emphasize. So that whatever is designed, whatever is put in place as a law or a code is followed down the line. Now that gap is really big. Building are continuing to go down. I'm also a contractor. I build, I go to the ground, I'm on site. We can have 8 sites. You have only 20 or 30 minutes on one site, and if there are more, then you have 20 or 30 minutes on one site in a week. So you actually leave the fundis to do the work after instructions. Now the problem is that they are informally trained. They cannot, some of them cannot even speak English. So this partnership is great in a way that we're trying to skill them to speak their language, and that's why we use the word fundi. We could easily say handyman or a technician or mason. So we are trying to speak their language so that they follow our instructions and they know the reasons why we put these codes there. We want to make sure that everything that is a mystery is demystified. For example, we want to speak the same language with him. When we say plumb bob and they say biliji, they have to know that we're speaking about the same word, the same tool, and they have to know the reason why they use that tool. So this partnership helps us to skill the people that do not go to school formally. But also, we were spreading it out all over the region. One of the things that we're working on with the National Building Review Board is that we are going to go regional, sub-regional. We are going to go to the north, east, west, and the central, and greater central, so that we train trainers. We train them to train other people in their local language, so the mistakes are at least minimized.
Okay.
So,
all right. Of course, we're talking about the National Building Review Board entering into a partnership with Makerere University to start training fundis to ensure that they mitigate those gaps that Mr. Mwase has mentioned. The bigger question for me, and of course I'll start with you, Mr. Mutalya. Why has this come at such a time as this? Why do you now feel the need to have partners like Makerere University to help you and facilitate what you're doing?
I think it didn't start yesterday. I mean, it did start today. Actually, last year we had an inaugural meeting, of course, brought in partnership with Makerere, and of course these fundis were brought together, and for us now to start this conversation. And so it's been 1 year, and so we with this workshop starting today, we are now trying to take stock of what we talked about last year. What have we achieved? What is the progress so far? Have there been certain challenges that have now come up that now we need to readdress? So for us, it didn't start today. It started way back. So we are trying to we are continuing this conversation, because for us, like engineers saying, compliance is very critical. Compliance is very critical, and if we find innovative ways of bringing together people, fundis, the people in the informal sector, to find a way to meet them at their level, so that we can speak the language they understand. We can demonstrate and put these codes in the language they understand. For us, we think it will go a long way in helping us improve on the compliance in the sector. And we know that academia plays a big role in research and development, and to us, as anchored in our strategic plan, research and development is important. And for us, Makerere becomes a very critical partner in this case, because through their structures, through their research and R&D processes and programs, we believe that we'll find solutions to these challenges that we face, and in the end get to the compliance that we deserve, that we aspire to have.
Well, makes sense, because Makerere as a university is taking on the next 100 years focusing on research. So in that regard, let's have assessment of the process so far. What is the response, first of all, from those that are taking on this nature of extended training? And then in terms of challenges, are there any challenges that are being faced on ground while they try to exercise these adjustments that you recommend?
True. The response is fair, I should say. And using the word fair means that there's a little bit of a hurdle. Because we have to explain, before I even tell you the response, I have to let you know that Makerere as a top university, we are trying to be relevant as well. We are trying to make sure that whatever we do it with other stakeholders, and it helps the community. So it's in another way of doing a community outreach. But now back to the question, we're talking about the response of the fundis themselves, the technicians. These are the busiest people on sites. They see no reason whatsoever to come to any formal setting, because that's how they've been living their lives, and they've been paid very well to do so. So some of them have made mistakes for more than 30 years, and they don't believe their mistakes. So out streamlining quality and quantity to make sure that everything is standardized is something that we have to teach them. We have to do more outreach, and that's why I'm saying we have to go regional. We have to be more on TV, like NTV. We have to be in newspapers to tell them why they have to be trained and standardizing their work. But you see, we also benchmarking. Rwanda is already changing even the instruction codes to the local language. Kenya is doing that as well. So we are trying to do something better. We're not only going to change it to a national language, but we shall also reduce some of the instructions in the regional languages. So the response is going to become better. We like we said, our liaising with the National Building Review Board began last year. This year it's much better. Companies are coming in to exhibit what they use, and it will be a very good education to the fundis that come to be trained.
Okay,
Yes,
so that brings me to the question of it's not only fundis that participate in this sector.
Yes,
you have so many other sector players. You have manufacturers. You have the issue of the quality of products and things that they use to do their job. You have the ever-changing technology, because now technology is changing. Every single morning you wake up, there's an addition to technology. And so in the midst of that, while you are addressing the issues of the fundi, how are you addressing these other market players that contribute to the chain?
When it comes to aspects of materials, methodologies, etc., we are not the only sector player. We have the National Bureau of Standards, where we are also in talks we've been talking to ensure that the quality of materials also improves.
Because you have people preferring to buy cement from Dubai than cement that is being put here.
And of course, like it was spelled out in the National Development Vision 2040, improving the quality of construction services is very critical. Materials is one of them. And so we now need to ensure that the regime and of course the market space allows for local people or local manufacturing companies to now produce for this market. But standard is very important, because if we fail on that one, then we shall not attract people. And bring in the aspect of technology. If we were to improve on our services in the construction sector, then it means that we now need to employ and the use of technologies, artificial intelligence, because even us in the building space, we thrive on data, we thrive on information. So it becomes very critical for us if we are going to compete in this region as well.
Okay, all right. You do have other fields that have taken a certain model of making sure that there's continuous monitoring and evaluation of how things are done. In the economics, you have the accountants and their group, their body or their umbrella actually has continuous assessment of the accountants. Every few years, you'll have to be reassessed to ensure that you're still on the standards of what is required and expected of you in delivery. In regards to managing and monitoring and evaluating the standards being maintained, Mr. Marcy, what do you speak into that?
That would be a question for Mr. Mutalya entirely, but let me try to interpret this. We have inspectors, building inspectors, we have building committees, and now we have National Building Review Board.
Yes, but
these are all stages.
The human resource of those.
Yes, that's why I'm trying. Yes, that's what I'm trying to. Yeah, that's where I'm coming to.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to give you an example of Kira Municipal Council, and the human resource is not even enough to compete with the mushrooming buildings, illegal and legal.
Yes.
So we have a problem of first of all budget. So their budget will not allow to have more inspectors. When you get an approved plan, they give you a job card. We call it, in the local language, they call it yellow card. They give you a job card which has stages of inspection. When you finished setup, we have to come and check. After setting up, after making after building the foundation, we have to come and check. We have to come and check the bars you're using, whether they are ribbed or twisted, accepted or unaccepted. So the inspector has to go through all those stages on every building, advising the contractor, the masons on site, the fundis for this matter, and the engineer as well. This does not happen in any municipality. They do their best, but they cannot measure up with the speed at which the buildings are mushrooming. So the human resource is still down, and we have two issues with that. First, they have to be trained consistently, because also technology changes all the time, and so many innovations are discovered, they're found, and they're meant to be incorporated in the new designs, and so many things are cancelled as well. So we have that problem that we hope that it will be mitigated pretty soon, and this is the reason why we have this partnership, to make sure we find out those problems and we solve them as time goes. We meet quite often and make sure that we solve this.
As the National Building Review Board, and in response, as you share your response, what are the challenges do you face in actually dispensing your mandate?
One of the about three challenges. One, of course, speaking to what Engineer Mwatse said, is the capacity of the local authorities, especially to enforce this, because the implementation is by the local authorities. But of course, we have capacity issues, and like you mentioned, the staffing levels are low, the qualifications and competencies are also still wanting. So that's one of the challenges that we face. But in mitigating that, we are working together. These partnerships are very critical for us. We're also partnering with the professional bodies, the Engineers Registration Board, the Architectural Registration Board, to find ways of how we can augment the capacity of these local authorities. The other challenge is also the aspects of enforcement. It's in our law, there is a framework, but we want to have, because there are many culprits out there, we want now to make sure, can we make it a little bit impunitive so that we deter many of these people that are coming, slipping through the process. And so we need also to work on enforcement. But the other challenge we face is that land is also an issue. In 2010, the country was declared a planning area, okay? But most of the land is not planned. Most of these areas, the municipal councils, the districts, have not yet planned properly, or whatever they have has not been implemented. So it's also, once the land has issues, building control is going to suffer, because the building is going on land. When the land is not planned, there is an issue. That's why we have a lot of congestion, urban sprawl as a result, and then infrastructure is actually affected at the end of the day. So we also need to try and mitigate those challenges there, and have the local authorities implement and develop and implement physical development plan, because without it, we're also going to suffer. The other, we're also working on a program with the regulator, professional bodies, to find ways of augmenting, having more staff at the, perhaps qualified staff at the local authorities. And if all the bodies accept this, I think we'll be able to have more qualified engineers, we'll have more qualified architects, even surveyors in the local authority. And
is that a conversation that has been opened?
It's now started. We now, I think the professionals, to get the board and the professionals meet on a quarterly basis, and this is one of the conversations that we are having with these professional bodies. Why? Because there is lack of personnel. So together with us, Ministry of Local Government, Ministry of Public Service, would like to find ways of having the local authorities recruit qualified and competent people. But again, the professional bodies have a bigger role to play, because they are the ones who register these people. So we want to find a way, a middle ground, because the process takes a bit of time. 2 to 3 years to register somebody. But building control needs to happen tomorrow. Yes. So how do we then help each other to have capacity at the local authorities?
Engineer Mwase, I know that the engineers are also facing a bit of a challenge. Because we all forget that it's Priscilla, Regina, Naroga building. It's my money, my land, my building. There, I call all the shots. While you have your professional things, I call the shots. So I will have you, the engineer, come to the site, give you advice, and I'll take your advice, but I won't take you many a times. Is the case currently. And so we will trust the fundi more to do the job. After all, they're the ones that are on ground on a daily basis. And therefore, there's been a lot of challenge. We had to, someone from the professional engineering body coming here and talking to us about that challenge of the under-appreciation of the engineering and of coming up with good, sustainable structures.
Now, thank you again, Priscilla. Now, to answer that, you see, your question is too overloaded, so I don't know how to break it down. Excuse me. Now, the first thing is, again, we are engaging National Building Review Board for some of the things, but let me break it down for you. When you said the land is yours, the money is yours, you see, he talked about punitive measures. It's punishing people who misbehave. Can we make it tougher? We were trying to tone that language down as engineers, because the more you make it tougher, the more you curtail development. People will be afraid of actually doing that. But we also, because right now I'm talking on behalf of Makerere University. I'm not talking on behalf of ERB, Engineering Registration Board, even I'm a member of Engineering Registration Board, but I'm also a member of Uganda Institute of Professional Engineers, which also gives us the ethics and the way we deal with the clients. Now, the question, we should be given more power to instruct, not to only advise, but instruct the clients that this is a no-no. For example, I can give you head clearance on stairs. You cannot make a head clearance of 1 meter, because we don't have people as short as that. There may be, but extremely few. So we have to take a standardized height. If you have at least 2.8 to 3 meters, you know that someone will walk through without any fear. Okay, the stairs also, they have to be, the rise has to be 150 and the landing has to be 300. Why would you make a stair of 50? It's a trip hazard. It's a trip hazard because someone's going to die. For example, the setback, we said the setback should be 1 meter. Why should you make a half meter? Because there's an engineering code and a fire code. If there is fire, you cannot escape. So we need to explain to you that that's a no-no, however much money you have.
So
that's
Mr.
a no-no.
Mwase, I guess what I'm trying to ask is
Yes,
that
please.
while those do exist and you are equipping the fundis with this knowledge to be able to support the market better, they still have to deal with the person who has the money.
But you see, let me tell you, Priscilla.
Them for alternatives.
Yes, let me tell you,
so
Priscilla.
how are you mitigating that in the trainings?
No, like I said, your question is overloaded. Let me tell you why we train fundis. They are engineering standards. What is the overlap of an iron bar? For it to be able to hold, is it 1 meter? Is it 3/4 meter? So you make an overlap of a 1/4 meter, that building is going to collapse. These are just standards. Why should you use a square? Why should a wall be on plumb? You see, there are loads that are distributed. Some of this language is too heavy for them. We just have to tell them the standard, that this is the reason use a square. Please don't put a rope from one end to the other end. Use a level. Use both a water level and a spirit level. This is nothing to do with the costs, actually. It's the standard and the quality of the building. The cost issue is specifically with our clients. You specify, we want a T16, and the client brings a T12. And the difference is 30,000 shillings. And if you multiply that 300 times, that's more than 9 million. So they say, I don't have 9 million, but I want my building to be there. But it will collapse. It will definitely collapse. So we try to make sure that we give these people skills. To make sure that also our clients follow through.
All right, to the review board.
Yes.
There's developing techniques and technologies, and within the East African region, that's even a different story. We do have admiration for the Middle East because their economy development is being measured on how beautiful the countries are looking like because of buildings. So in regards to the same for us here in Uganda, what's the future of development in this construction sector?
I think the future is bright. Going by the statistics, economic statistics, the figures show that I think last year we're growing at about 4%. We're now projected to be growing at 7% by end of 2023. What does that mean is that there is growth that we're experiencing, but the drivers, manufacturing, industry, services, including, and of course the biggest part of services, there's construction, because with manufacturing, a guy would want to have a building somewhere. So obviously along that chain, you have buildings somewhere in there and construction services required. So the future is bright for us. But like I mentioned, the bottlenecks within our Vision 2040 must be mitigated. Aspects of standardization, aspect of strict regulation and legal frameworks must be in place, because and of course those will then talk to the standards that we need to achieve. Because if we're going to be like Dubai or the UAE, we must make sure we attract people, but the people we're attracting are actually looking at a particular standard. And then of course the aspect of land, the way we use our land also needs to be, we need to improve. It's one of our challenges. And so we need also something to do, there's something we need to do there. Then construction services also need to improve. The cost of inputs in terms of materials, the cost of services in terms of perhaps professional fees, etc., the cost of doing business, and of course we have also tried to, as the board, to have a uniform fees for building construction, and actually we have brought them lower, right? And that way we are trying to ensure that the market space becomes more involved, and people we have more players within the sector, and then have more buildings and also attract people within this market space as well. So we need to address those bottlenecks, and if we don't, then it becomes it will be a problem for us to grow. But again, embracing technology. Embracing technology is very important. And like one of the tools that we have put, for instance, in place is the building industry management system. That one's also helping us to ensure that there is order in the sector. It is also helping the local authorities do better. Government must collect revenue. We have also put these tools also helping government to streamline revenue collection, especially when it comes to approval fees, building control fees, inspection, etc., etc. So these, if we do this, we end up being like Dubai. But if we don't, then it becomes very critical. The other, which is critical, climate change. We also need to ensure we manage, besides managing our land, we also need to see how we manage the environment, ensure also that we do not wasteful, and we ensure that we adapt, because our spaces need to be habitable, our spaces need to be comfortable for the people that are going to be using them.
All right, thank you so much for this enlightenment in conversation, and I trust that, of course, it has given you more deeper understanding in regards to the construction sector, but also the partnership between Uganda Building Review Board and Makerere University to ensure that there's a little more attention to skilling of the fundis that then get to work on your site. Therefore, make good of your money to make you more money than you losing money at the end of the day. I trust that it's been informative and insightful. This takes us into a break. We'll return shortly. Do stay with us.